recording. We'll continue with where were you? You were with you were
No,
the
the June 1944 would be. We've just recently been having all these dates, what, 70 years? No?
oh,
I
the
remember-
70th anniversary of
Yeah.
D-Day.
I remember that last day before I went into the Land Army. We had conscription in those days. Everybody, I think, between the age of 18 and 42 or something, had to be in either in the services or something. And I can't, anyway, I was going into this thing, and I can remember the last day, walking down that long lane, goes through the town, and it must have been a very good day, because as I was walking, you could see the planes going over, many of them, and each plane was trailing, I think it was 3 gliders, and the gliders were all full of troops. They were it was after D-Day. And
After
they were taking troops in
to France.
to the back behind.
Behind the lines, behind the German lines in
yeah,
France.
Yeah, and I mean, just what I saw, there was plane after plane, and each plane had 3 gliders towed behind.
So this was after June 6, 1944.
Yeah. Well, a couple of days or something.
This could have been June 8th, 1944.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah.
Something like that. And I think, from what you read, they weren't all that successful. Apparently, a lot of those gliders had trouble coming down. Anyway, I went in. I had to. I went in there, and I was there for 2 years till.
Oh, Landau, when was Landau? Yeah.
Which was, and all the time I was in Sussex, but sort of the north part of the Downs and that. And my father died during that period, I suppose. I guess it must have been the end of 45, probably, because I know it was in November. Anyway, so I came out in August 46.
So you spent 44, 45, 46 in the Women's Land Army, or parts of them?
2 years, exactly 2 years. Well, 2 years.
August,
and 2
so
months.
August 44 to August 46?
Well, June, so it was 2 years and 2 months.
June 46 to August, June 44 to August 46.
Yeah. And then through the principal of the high school, she sent me, I don't know why, to, I suppose they didn't know what to do with me, because all the other girls had sort of, in that day, you either became a teacher or nurse, or you took a secretarial thing. There was nothing else. I know it was quite different here, but I think there were about, in my year, I suppose there were about 50 girls altogether. And I think only 2 or 3 of those went to university. I mean, it's completely different from now. Everybody goes to university. And of course there was much more here. But anyway, I went to this, she sent me to this, and I was sort of I think you'd call it apprentice to, there was a family, this was in Chichester, and they owned an antique shop in a funny old building. I mean, the building itself was antique, and they did all sorts. Well, it was a family affair, and they had all sorts of lovely stuff in there, and one of the sons was sort of showing me around and trying to teach me, and I'm sort of thankful for it, because it started me on looking at places and furniture and all that kind of thing, which lasted the rest of my life, sort of thing.
But you never had any nice furniture. What do you mean?
Well, I would have done if and when I think of the prices they cost in those days, you know. Yeah, but it was antique furniture. You had what would.
But you never even had a single piece of antique furniture.
I would have done because by the time I was having a home, that kind of thing cost a fortune. It didn't then, you see. Anyway, I was only there about less than a year, because I simply couldn't afford to stay there.
Stay where?
Pardon?
Stay where?
At the antique shop.
Oh, you were living there, or?
No, I wasn't living there. I was working there.
Yeah. So you couldn't afford to work there, or because they weren't paying much?
No, it was sort of like apprentice, yes. No, they weren't paying. They weren't paying. My father had died, and my mother was, in the house, and he hadn't left much money, and but that's another story. And on what I was taking home, we just could not live on it. So I still don't know quite why I decided, whether it was to do with this principle or what, I don't know, to take the secretarial college training, what do you call it? And I know the places that must have been done through this woman, and I ended up in the London College of Secretaries, which was a kind of a fancy name, and it was in Kensington, which is, as you know, a suburb of. It's not a suburb. It's a part of the centre of London. Kensington Gardens, oh Lord, I'm getting, the big.
Oh, yeah, where Peter Pan.
No, that's it. No, the big round orchestra place.
The Albert Hall.
Yeah, and then there's the Kensington Gardens, and which sort of goes a little way along Kensington Palace, which is where Diana used to live.
Or the
Princess Diana, yeah.
Prince Charles, yes.
Yeah, well, does he? No, I don't think he lives there now. No. But, well, he did then, yes, of course. Well, that was the area. And...
area of the Secretarial College.
Yeah. And we used to go to lunch. I made two friends there. And actually, I had a wonderful time that year. We didn't have any money, but so therefore they showed me all things. We used to go to, this was the day of Laurence Olivier, and he was doing his, Shakespeare all over the place for us, and we'd go to, and they just started bringing in the big American musicals that.
Oh, to the West End.
Yeah, which had been held up by the war, sort of thing, and we used to go. These two friends, they lived sort of in London part, and they knew where everything was, and we'd go to very often to these shows, and we'd go into the gods, as they called it. That's the highest part of the theatres, because you've got a lot of theatres in that part. And what we did then, you couldn't reserve seats or anything, and they cost 1 and 6 or something, the price of what, 3 chocolate bars, you know. And anyway, we'd go and we'd line up. Everybody would line up at the back door, and then they'd open these doors at 6 o'clock or whatever it was, and everybody would run up these concrete stairs to this, because you didn't
no reserved seating.
place. No, and whoever was first got the best seats. See, and I think some of them were just forms. You know? They weren't proper seats.
Forms? You mean benches?
Yeah, yeah. Not all of them, but I think some of them were. And
this was and you didn't enter at the front. You entered at the back.
This was the back. Yeah, this was the door, and it led into this balcony. You see, way up, and they called it in the gods. But you saw the thing for very little money, which was all we had, you see. And I was getting, the government paid me as they did for all the services, the veterans. And I don't know how, because they didn't include the land army then, but for some reason they did include me, and they gave me an income for a year.
After you left the land army?
Yeah, and I left the antique shop, you know, which was about 6 months. And anyway, they did.
Sorry, no, but it wasn't for the antique shop. It was for being in the land army, I see. But you got income.
Yeah. And my mother was not so bad then, because my aunt had given up her house. My grandparents had died, and she'd given up her house in Leytonstone, and she came and lived with my mother, so that they shared expenses, you know.
Yeah, and I guess she was still there when I came in 1973, I guess it was.
Yeah. So